When you realize nobody cares, everything changes. We live in a world that constantly demands our attention, approval, and energy. The eyes of others weigh on us. Opinions sting like arrows, and the fear of judgment becomes a silent tyrant. Yet the moment we grasp the brutal truth that ultimately nobody truly cares, we are freed. Not in a cruel sense, but in the liberating wisdom of self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. The judgment of others has power only if we allow it to. Consider this. Every insult, every slight, every whisper of criticism exists first in the mind of the one who speaks it. Their concerns, their envy, their fears, these are theirs, not ours. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When we realize that others' opinions are fleeting, shallow, and often self-serving, the weight they carry vanishes. Suddenly, the energy we spent seeking validation, approval, and recognition becomes ours to reclaim. And here lies the paradoxical strength. The moment we accept that nobody is watching, nobody is measuring our worth, we begin to live authentically. There is no need to perform, no need to please, no need to justify. Our thoughts, actions, and emotions return to their rightful owner, we. Life stops being a stage for others and becomes a battlefield of self-mastery. Every choice becomes deliberate, every action measured, and every emotion disciplined. The wise know this instinctively. Seneca wrote, "A man's true happiness is to live in accordance with nature, free from the anxieties of opinion." In other words, the mind that escapes the chains of a public approval gains clarity. Anger, jealousy, and fear, all of these destructive emotions lose their grip. We begin to see clearly who we are, what we want, and the strength we already possess. Yet liberation comes with responsibility. Freed from the weight of judgment, we cannot allow laziness or indulgence to take root. Our power is in discipline, our control in self-governance. The world does not owe us recognition, it does not owe us fairness. And once we stop expecting it, we become unstoppable. Our focus sharpens, our purpose crystallizes, and our character becomes unshakable. The power of indifference, why nobody caring, is your greatest weapon. There is a moment, a quiet, invisible moment, when the weight of truth presses on us like stone. A moment when we realize, with shocking clarity, that nobody truly cares about our struggles, our dreams, or even our suffering. And it is terrifying. At first, this realization cuts through us like a blade. We search for sympathy, for acknowledgement, for someone, anyone, to validate the hours we've sacrificed, the battles we've endured, the scars we've earned. And there is nothing. Silence, indifference. The world continues, uncaring and relentless. Yet within this very void lies a paradoxical gift: freedom. This is the lesson the Stoics have always whispered to those willing to listen. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, reminded himself that, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. The indifference of others cannot touch us unless we allow it. The world's apathy, its blindness, its obsession with its own affairs is not a curse. It is an opportunity. Once we see that nobody is there to either help or hinder us, we can finally stop seeking their approval and begin to control ourselves with absolute precision. Think about it. Every thought, every emotion, every reaction we have in daily life is often a silent bargaining with the world. Notice me. approve of me, value me. And when that recognition never comes, we feel anger, bitterness, or despair. But these are the chains that bind us. Seneca observed, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The suffering caused by what others think of us is largely imagined. Their indifference is reality, and reality, no matter how cold, is far more useful than illusion." When nobody cares, the theater of social expectation collapses. The applause disappears, and the criticism vanishes, leaving only the raw, unadorned world and ourselves. And here is where true power begins. When the world does not demand that we be anything other than what we are, we can finally focus on what truly matters: the cultivation of virtue, the mastery of our impulses, and the discipline to act rightly, even when no one is watching. The Stoics call this living according to nature, living in accordance with reason and purpose. This is where our indifference becomes armor, where our solitude becomes strength. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Let that sink in. The blows, the betrayals, the insults, they exist independently of our approval. They do not harm us intrinsically. Only our judgment of them does. And when we stop seeking validation, when we stop caring whether anyone notices our victories or mourns our losses, we are free to choose our responses deliberately, calmly, with the precision of a master craftsman. The destructive emotions that once shattered our nights, rage, envy, fear, begin to lose their grip. They no longer dictate our steps because we are no longer bargaining with the world for recognition or favor. This is why the realization that nobody cares is so transformative. It strips away distraction, illusion, and dependency. It forces us inward toward a self-reliance that is both terrifying and magnificent. It teaches us that the only person whose opinion truly matters is our own. The only judgment that shapes our destiny is our own response to the world. And when we cultivate that inner judgment, fortified by reason and tested in silence, we discover a power few ever taste. The power to remain unshaken, unbothered, unbroken, no matter the chaos outside. And yet, this is not an easy path. The world will attempt to seduce us back into its illusions. It will whisper that we are weak if we do not seek praise, that we are cold if we do not seek sympathy. But these whispers are nothing more than the desperate attempts of those still enslaved by opinion. The truly powerful do not react to the clamor of the indifferent. We walk through their noise as though it is a fog, present yet irrelevant. The Stoics call this apatheia, the serene indifference to what lies beyond our control, not cruelty, not emptiness, but calm, unbreakable focus. In this clarity, we discover another truth. Nobody's care was ever required for our growth. The victories we've imagined, the wisdom we've sought, the resilience we've built, none of it depended on the approval of others. It depended on our own discipline, our own courage, and our own refusal to surrender to destructive emotion. And the deeper we embrace this, the less the world can touch us. The indifference of others transforms from a threat into a shield, from a void into a proving ground. The silent revolution, how nobody caring forces true mastery. There is a quiet devastation in realizing that the world will not pause for us, that no one will rush to defend our pride, celebrate our victories, or soften the blows of misfortune. At first, it feels like betrayal. At first, it feels like isolation. We have been trained, almost from birth, to seek the eyes of others, to crave applause, and to fear disapproval. And then, suddenly, the illusion shatters. Nobody cares. Nobody has been waiting for us. Nobody has been watching. And in that moment, everything changes. Because the truth is undeniable. We were never meant to live in the shadows of others' approval. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Not their recognition, not their acceptance, not their judgment. The world's indifference is a mirror, reflecting our choices back to us, stripped of illusion. When we see that nobody cares, we are forced to confront ourselves, not the flattering reflection others provide, but the raw, unembellished reality. And it is here that the seeds of mastery are planted. We begin to understand that every emotion, every reaction, every wave of fear or anger we experience is entirely within our control. Epictetus wrote, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. The sting of insult, the weight of neglect, the ache of loneliness, these are not inflicted by the outside world. They are born inside us, cultivated by dependence on approval and nurtured by expectation. When nobody cares, those chains are broken, and we are left standing in the void, alone, yes, but profoundly free. It is in this freedom that the first taste of power appears. For when nobody cares, we no longer need to perform. We no longer need to please. We no longer need to bend ourselves to fit the fragile molds of public expectation. Every action becomes deliberate. Every word deliberate. Every thought deliberate. We begin to sculpt ourselves not for applause, not for recognition, but for the only judge that matters, reason. Every fear is met with courage. Every anger with patience. Every temptation with discipline. Slowly, the mind once enslaved by desire, and judgment becomes a fortress. Seneca warned, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." The indifference of the world forces us into confrontation with our own cravings. Approval, admiration, and attention are luxuries, not necessities. When the world refuses to give them, we discover that we never needed them to begin with. And in this discovery lies a profound, almost savage liberation. We are untouchable by the opinions of others and therefore invincible in our pursuit of virtue. The path is not easy. There will be moments of despair, moments when we feel invisible, worthless, abandoned. But those moments are the crucible in which resilience is forged. The Stoics taught that suffering is the forge of strength, that adversity reveals character. Each instance of neglect, each act of indifference from the world becomes a test. And with every test, we grow stronger, sharper, more resolute. We begin to understand that the only power that truly matters is the mastery over ourselves. And mastery is quiet. It is unseen. It is invisible to the world. Yet it is the most dangerous force of all. For when we are free from the chains of others' care, we are free to act, free to endure, free to live with an unshakable mind. Every destructive emotion that once threatened to control us, envy, rage, anxiety, despair, loses its grip. We respond, we act, we endure, not for anyone else, but because we choose to. And that choice, that deliberate act of self-command, is absolute power. We begin to move through life like shadows in the night, silent, deliberate, untouchable. The world may attempt to bind us with ridicule, rejection, or neglect, but we are beyond its reach. Every slight, every dismissal, every whisper of indifference becomes fuel for our inner revolution. We are no longer slaves to attention. We are masters of ourselves. We are no longer driven by applause. We are driven by reason. And we are no longer vulnerable to destructive emotion. We are fortified by it. The solitude of strength. When nobody cares, we learn to endure. There is a terrifying clarity in realizing that the world will not intervene for us, that nobody will rise to our defense, that nobody will applaud our victories, that nobody will soften the blows that life delivers. At first, it feels like abandonment, like the ground has been ripped from beneath our feet. And yet, this abandonment is the forge of true strength. The Stoics taught us that adversity is not a punishment. It is the testing ground of the soul. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. When we accept that nobody truly cares, we confront a profound truth. Life is indifferent, and the opinions of others are meaningless unless we grant them power. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." In the same way, it is impossible for us to grow if we continue to seek validation from a world that cannot give it. The indifference of others forces us to look inward, to measure ourselves not against applause or criticism, but against reason, virtue, and courage. This is a dark lesson, but it is liberating. Because once we understand that nobody cares, we stop performing. We stop bending ourselves into shapes that please others. Every insult, every slight, every act of neglect becomes powerless. The chains of dependence on approval are shattered. And in that void, in that silence, we begin to cultivate a mind that is unshakable, a spirit that is untouchable. Seneca wrote, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." The indifference of others removes the illusion of control, forcing us to rely on what we truly can control, ourselves. In this solitude, we also learn patience. We learn to endure without bitterness. Every moment of neglect, every rejection, every act of apathy is a teacher. We discover that suffering is not inflicted by the world. It is produced within by our own judgments. When nobody cares, we cannot blame them, and we cannot hide behind their acknowledgement. We must confront ourselves, and in doing so, we cultivate the one thing the world cannot take from us: fortitude. Fortitude is silent. It does not boast. It does not seek approval. It is born in the shadows, nurtured in the quiet moments when no one watches, when no one notices. Epictetus reminds us, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." And this embodiment becomes possible only when we stop trying to please the indifferent world. Every choice we make, every action we take, becomes deliberate. Every thought is tested, refined, and tempered in the fire of solitude. We also discover the power of indifference to the chaos around us. The anger of others, the judgments of strangers, the petty cruelty of acquaintances, they all fall away, powerless to disturb our peace. Marcus Aurelius said, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." When nobody cares, the external world loses its ability to dictate our emotions. The storms outside may rage, but within, we remain unshaken. Our mind becomes the fortress, our reason the shield and our self-control the sword. And herein lies the ultimate liberation, the realization that our worth is not determined by attention, approval, or admiration. The indifference of others is not a void to fear. It is an opportunity to reclaim ourselves. We are free to act, to endure, to live not according to the whims of the world, but according to the principles of reason, virtue, and courage. The destructive emotions that once controlled us, envy, anger, fear, begin to lose their hold. We are no longer reactive. We are deliberate. No longer enslaved by desire. We are governed by wisdom. This is the dark, profound secret the Stoics have always known. When nobody cares, everything changes. The world's apathy is not our weakness. It is the catalyst for our strength. Every slight becomes a test. Every act of neglect, a mirror reflecting our inner resilience. And in the silence of a world that does not notice, we discover the loudest truth of all. We are capable of enduring, of thriving, of mastering ourselves beyond measure.